Hi, I'm Yasmin Owusu, and this is my producer, Charlie Kesenek.
But I'm your husband, and you're using all my stuff right now. What are you talking about?
So anyway, I've been looking for a one-stop shop podcast for wellness, amateur sociology, psychology, pop culture, and whatever else sparks my interest. So I created one. We are limited to no lanes. We hit the gas and get into it. This is Peaked. Press play. Hi, welcome back to Peak Podcast. I'm Yasmin, your host, and yeah, here we are again. It's been about a week since I recorded. I recorded last Thursday, and it's Thursday again, and so much has transpired. And we've had some highs and some lows this week. Like I had one of those weeks last week where I've said week a lot now, but where just kind of a bunch of just logistical technological nonsense just kind of went awry. Like my phone broke and then I ordered a phone from Back Market and I got that. And like there's something immediately wrong with the screen and I had to send that back and blah, blah, blah. And like then I just like had a password nightmare because I just kept changing. And then I turned on Charlie's old iPhone just in between when I was waiting for my Back Market phone. It's like a refurbished phone company where you basically just get like cheap, good phones or whatever. But yeah, in the 2-3 days or whatever, when I was like just waiting for my phone to come, I reactivated one of Charlie's old iPhones, and I like just to do this like social media stuff for Peaked and like whatever, just for apps. Like obviously I couldn't call or anything. I didn't set up like my entire network or anything, but like all the like passwords for TikTok, Insta, like WhatsApp to call my family, like I put on that phone, and then I had to like redo that all over again with this phone that ended up coming to me semi-broken. And Back Market were great about it, gave me the full refund or whatever, but still, like I still had to wait for another one. And then I had to do all that password nonsense again. It was just all going wrong and insane. Sometime during that situation, I managed to lose on Sly's Walk when we were hiking in the woods. That iPhone I reactivated of Charlie's, thank God. I mean, it's an old phone. It was smashed and like, not too serious of a belonging of his that he cared about so much, but still I lost that and that's annoying. And that same day, Charlie lost track of his wallet. And so like pretty late at night, we're going to the tennis court or like the park where we play tennis, looking around in the bushes for this wallet that ended up just being in the car. I mean, it was just kind of bananas. But then it's one of those things. The next day or 2 days later, whatever, everything fell into place. Oh, by the way, I forgot to also mention during that whole me and the phones and whatever, like Charlie also had this insane like not UPS, I don't want to slander them, this whole FedEx package like debacle where he was like sent on a wild goose chase to get this package, which was already late anyway. And then I also had my own issues with this other like package. I mean, it was just, Mercury was not in retrograde, but like, I don't know, maybe it was in Gatorade. Something was going on where everything was just insane. And then the next day, or I don't remember if it was like exactly the next day or 2 days later, every single one of those problems just like fixed itself and everything fell into place like seamlessly. And like, it just felt like, was this like a test? Like this was like, if I didn't forsake the God in the universe that I get to move forward. Like it just felt like all this resistance and then just complete like release and everything just works out in a way that like barely makes sense. Like one of the like accounts I just couldn't get into, it just seemed like the account was like, you know what? You're good, girl. And just like let me in for no reason. It was bizarre at the end of the day, but we're not going to poo-poo our blessings. I'm going to switch from that kind of nonsense to some good news. Our boy Fetty Wap was released just recently. I mean, it's Thursday now, so it's been like a while, like maybe a week or so. I don't know how familiar everybody is with Fetty Wap, but I mean, I think most of us know that song Trap Queen at the very least. I mean, we know 1738, like, hey, what's up, hello, all of it. New Jersey's finest, New Jersey's prodigal son, Fetty Wap. I actually remember seeing him after his like big boom of fame on like Real Housewives of New Jersey or something. He was like helping to produce one of the daughter's albums. I don't even freaking know. And then this week, lo and behold, he's in the house of one of the Real Housewives of New Jersey's, one of the women. Jennifer Aiden, who just happens to be Turkish but ethnic Armenian. And I just like to point out any Armenian as a half Armenian. It's just one of those things you do. I do the same thing with Ghanaians. If anyone's Ghanaian, I'm like, someone says their name and I'm like, Ghanaian. They didn't ask. But anyway, so he was at one of their houses. I guess I looked through a comment section on it. He does kind of vaguely know them from, I mean, some of them are from Patterson and so is he. And, just being famous people. And he's a fan of the show. But I think this was like his manager or lawyer or something like that. Someone in his team was throwing a welcome back party and knows this woman, Jennifer Aiden, and asked to throw it at her house. So I think that's what's happening. Either way, he seems like he is having a gay all time. It seems to him as though the world just waited for him to be released. It was not 10 years because I mean, his height of his fame, I feel like was like 2016, like that was his summer. So it might've been more like 2018 or something. He went away, normal stuff, normal drug stuff, nothing weird, nothing Epstein-y. And yeah, I mean, he's just being appreciated and welcomed back the way that I think he should. I think a lot of it is just our nostalgia for 2016. I'm sure a lot of people feel similarly and maybe some not. Maybe some people had a year from hell, but like that year hit for me. It was great. Like I was working at, a job where, I mean, it was a hard job. Like it was a barbecue place and it was like very physical. But I was making really good money there. And it was early on before how busy it was had really like disgruntled me and exhausted me. And a lot of the work politics came into it later when I was there. I was there for like 5 years, right? So like this was like year 1 or 2 and like it was just fresh and I was like, make good money. And I could make good money in a few days. I worked like 3 days a week there. And one of those days was a double, right? So I worked like Tuesday, Saturday, double, and then Sunday morning. And that was it. That was like my whole schedule. And I was making like in a week there, I could make like $1,200. Like the tips were pretty wild because like, I mean, the checks were really big. So if you made a percentage of that and like it was really popular, like it was in Red Hook and like there was like a line out the block. I mean, the line was like, we always joked it was like the line was to Brooklyn Heights, but it was in Red Hook. If you look up Brooklyn and neighborhoods, that's a long distance and it's not, it's hyperbole. But, and all my friends kind of worked also in kind of like, I don't want to say low effort because that's not true. Cause I mean, some of them were bartending and stuff, but like we all worked in low responsibility jobs. We could just meet up on a dime. We all had like kind of some disposable income. We weren't paying a lot of money in rent. I think all of our relationships were going kind of fine. Like it was just kind of a good vibey summer. Like I was meeting up with my friends at Prospect Park. We were like barbecuing. I mean, I don't know. It was just, there was a vibe. Obama was president. Like it was just, that was like the last the last good summer. I sound like Carol Radziwill from The Real Housewives. Like I had like one good summer left. But it kind of feels that way. I mean, we like went from that and like sort of careened into like COVID and then, now fascism. So I think part of the excitement of seeing Fetty Wap come out, sure, great artists, really fun songs. We all love them. But I think part of it is like we missed 2016 and what the summer of his album represented. And, I hate to like be that annoying person who like rains on everyone's parade, but like everyone's like, oh, he thought we forgot him, but we didn't. But like low key we did because like for the couple years before he went in after his big albums, he like was forgotten enough that he went back to his previous employment that landed him in jail. So we had kind of forgotten him. And Charlie was working for a couple of Live Nation venues back then. So he was working at Gramercy Tavern and I'm not going to try to remember the name of the other one, but Fetty Wap performed there and it was let's just say he was not at his peak. So there is a lot of time there where maybe he was not being fully paid attention to and appreciated before he went in. But all's forgiven, right, Fetty Wap? Bring us back to 2016. Please be the, rather than the harbinger of the apocalypse. And we've seen many of those lately. Let's try to think of this as a good sign that maybe we're going to have a year soon, if not now, that feels a lot like 2016 without the eyebrows. Good God. I could show you video evidence of like the state of my eyebrows back then. Like I'm actually now afraid to do much of anything with them. Like I would like to make them more defined, more art, but I will literally barely fill them in, barely make up for the mistakes that I made in the 90s where I have half a bald eyebrow. Like I will just fill in that because I'm so afraid of the blindness that I clearly was experiencing in the 20, I want to say 16 to almost 18 range. I had what looked like stick on, like superimposed tattooed eyebrows. It was insane, insane, diabolical. Everyone who I say this to is like, what? No, I don't remember that. And then I show them photos. They're like, oh, well, I mean, it's insane. But anyway, in other things that are coming through in my life, other than Fetty Wap being released from prison, which I guess is coming through in my life. I live in Austin, as I've mentioned before, Austin, Texas. Um, you know, I feel like when I say Austin, Texas, like native Austinites are like, it makes you sound like a transplant. But for people who are not from the United States, I feel like it bears saying. I think here no one's thinking it's like, Austin, Colorado, right? But anyway, I live in Austin and we have this kind of year. I mean, it's not every year that it's a crazy freeze, but there is a kind of thing where there'll just be a crazy drop in temperature. And I mean, this happens yearly, but the severity varies. Like the first year that I lived here, yes, like if the temperature dropped, a bunch of people's pipes burst. Like it can kind of shut down the city. But actually, the year before I moved here, so like during COVID, I want to say there was a really, really bad one that took out power for some people for like a long time, and people died. Like it was severe. And of course, it's famously known that Ted Cruz chose to go to Cabo during this time, saying that, or was it Puerto Vallarta? Does it matter? He went on a vacation during this time when like his state that he serves was being like infrastructurally collapsed by this freeze. Essentially, it's like the temperature drops, a bunch of freezing rain happens, and like insanity ensues. And there isn't the infrastructure for extreme cold, weather situations here. I understand. I'm from the Northeast. I know there's probably people scoffing in Vermont or like, Minnesota, just being like, all my listeners in all those places would be scoffing, thinking, oh my God, like it's child's play. Who cares about a freezing rain? But when you don't have a city that has the infrastructure and is like ready for it, it can really take the grid down. And it did. It was really bad. I wasn't here yet. But I had a few in the 4.5 years that I've been here. We had like one of our trees fall down because it just or a bunch of branches off it just collapse and have to be like whatever, taken out of the yard because the heaviness of all the ice just kind of took it down, and people had power lines down. Like things have happened, but not quite to that severity. But we're all kind of thinking it might be similar to that severity because Ted Cruz, again, has been photographed hightailing it out of town right when it's being announced that the freeze is coming through. It's expected on Saturday. I'm recording this on Thursday, so you will know already if this was anything worth worrying about. I'm not doing too much hoarding and being insane. Whatever happens, like I'm going to try to, cover my cacti and I don't know, drip the faucets and we have enough food for my dog, and there's always kind of enough food in your house for you if you really think about it, right? Like we don't need to like go nuts. Like you probably have like a loaf of bread. I did have to go to my grocery store to get food for Sly and make sure that he has enough food because he can't purvey for himself, obviously, and he can't just like scavenge granola, whatever us humans can do for one day if we're stuck in the house. But while there, I did notice people were purchasing, every single person had toilet paper in their cart. I do not believe all of you were low on toilet paper. And I don't understand the toilet paper panic, like at all. It's insane to me. You're all thinking that like in this one day it's not forecasted to be freezing and raining for days on end. We might have no power, but that's not going to stop anyone from necessarily going to the grocery store. We're not expecting road closures. So like, I don't understand the hoarding of toilet paper. It's just wild behavior. And actually cleaning your backside, there are other ways to do it. And a lot of cultures do it in other ways. And I just don't think that's the biggest thing to panic about. it's nuts. But anyway, so we saw that happening, and I'm not really doing a whole lot differently, but I definitely am looking at this freeze a little bit more sideways than the ones in the past years that I've been here, because Ted Cruz is like the not greyhound. He's like the groundhog of freezes. If he runs away to Mexico, we can expect it to be a severe one. We're going to move on from this, and I'm going to keep it pretty smooth brain though this week, because that's just how I'm feeling. I'm feeling like I don't want to engage the wrinkles in my brains this week, so we're going to talk about a bunch of pop culture stuff. I don't know how aware everyone is of this Victoria Beckham, David Beckham, Brooklyn Beckham, and Nicola Peltz drama. So these people, if you don't know Victoria Beckham by that name, Posh Spice might ring a bell. David Beckham obviously is one of the biggest footballers, or, soccerers. I'm African, so I'm going to say the football soccer players of all time. Just an amazing talent in that area. And these two are married and they have kids. So for a while, there have been rumors and just stories about the fact that Victoria Beckham, Posh Spice, does not get along with her son, Brooklyn Beckham's wife, now wife, but even when they were girlfriend and boyfriend, that there seemed to be some discord between her and this woman, Nicola Peltz, his wife now. And, largely they've kind of dispelled it publicly when asked, but there have been some funny movements, some, not posting on this one's birthday, or, removing this person from certain photos. On both sides, I would say there's been a little bit of signs that maybe there's something to these blind items and just stories that they don't get along. And I do remember there was some controversy around Nicola Peltz's wedding dress, because it was supposed to be designed by Victoria Beckham, and then it wasn't. And like her story, Nicola Peltz's story, is that last minute she was kind of told by Victoria Beckham, she's an accomplished designer at this point too. I should mention Victoria Beckham has like a design house that has been fairly successful, has struggled in the last few years, but we can give her flowers that she actually made some waves in the fashion world. Anyway, her company and her said that they couldn't do it in the timing, and so in Nicola Peltz's I'm saying testimony like I'm in court. What her story basically is that she had to just go another way and go with Valentino because she was in a pinch. Victoria Beckham's story, and I don't think that she said it herself, but I feel like through channels or whatever, we have heard that she is saying that there was always a plan, that Nicola Peltz actually just wanted to wear Valentino, and she had to kind of be convinced by Brooklyn in the first place to wear Victoria Beckham, just to support his mom's brand. We don't know. I mean, who's right or who's wrong, we're never going to know probably. But either way, there's just always been this kind of back and forth between them, that we keep hearing that this one's left out of that and this one's not in this family photo and whatever. So recently, Brooklyn Beckham did actually post about his mom and come out basically swinging and saying that, he stayed silent for so long, but he can't stay silent any longer. And he will not have these kinds of rumors going on that it's like his wife who's the difficult one or whatever. He says that basically his mom, here's where it gets weird. He said that he basically wanted to renew his vows and have a second wedding, because at his actual wedding, his mom, Victoria Beckham, hijacked his first dance with bride, essentially like that dance you have, the first dance after you take your vows, and you have a romantic dance and everyone watches you. Apparently, he is saying that his mom instead chose to dance suggestively with him and grind on him in front of all the guests. And by the way, I've seen some hilarious TikToks and AIs of what that might have looked like. And if you're bored, please just do a simple Google of that, and it's very easy to come up with some of them. They are funny. You just have people throwing it back, wearing a silky Victoria Beckham dress with a fake bob on. Anyway, so whatever. He's saying that, and just basically that he's always kind of had to play the role and buy into the brand of the Beckhams. And he's just done it without, flinching and without complaint. And he just doesn't want to do it anymore and can't take it anymore. And he's going to defend his wife. And that's essentially the sum of it. And again, we haven't gotten, I don't think, an official response from the senior Beckhams. I do think that we are hearing their side, though, through the stories that we're hearing, the rebuttal stories, essentially. I do think it comes from their people. We don't have to be naive about that. And essentially, their side of it is that there was a dedication by, was it John Legend or someone, I don't know, whatever famous singer was singing at Brooklyn Beckham's wedding and dedicated a song or whatever to Victoria. And that's why she was dancing and blah, blah. And I guess that side of the fence are saying essentially that Nicola Peltz just can't stand when all the attention isn't on her. And even though that was just a special moment with an artist that Victoria knows, she just couldn't take that it wasn't about her on her wedding. Can you imagine? Should there be any moment for the mother-in-law to twirl around and have a moment I just don't even know what she's talking about. It's insane. I feel like Madison Humphrey would have a field day with all of this. And if she hasn't already, I should look into it. Here's my opinion on it. Obviously, I can't know what's really going on. So let's get that out of the way. I don't need anybody hopping in my comments or sending me emails being you don't know these people. I know I don't know these people. This is an opinion. My opinion is it doesn't really matter what happened. I think it's ridiculous and insane for a, woman who is older than me to be fighting with a 20-something-year-old woman about anything. I don't think a 20-something-year-old woman can fight with me if they try. This is someone who is half, if not more, less than half your age. So ultimately, and it's involved with your young son. I just think no one has killed anybody. No one is accused of criminal activity or anything dangerous. So having petty feuds with your son's wife, to me, is just so insanely pathetic that I actually don't care about the particulars. If Nicola Peltz is an absolute C-word and is just so self-obsessed and rude, it doesn't matter. She's a kid and she's your kid's son's wife. Just be chill. None of this could possibly be that serious. I mean, I understand on their side, the Brooklyn Beckham and Brooklyn Beckham and Nicola Peltz's side, wanting their wedding to be their time and go their way. So that is reasonable. But if, let's say that she really was just kind of being dramatic or just whatever, I would just be I'm sorry. I just, it's my friend who's an artist and my bad. And I would just clean it up. So the fact that we keep hearing that there are problems with the dress and this and that, these problems are too petty for a grown ass woman of pushing 50, if not 50 plus, to be arguing with such a young girl about. So that's where I'm at with it. I just kind of think there's nothing that would make me side with a woman of that age beefing with her son's wife. Girl, it's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed for you and you should be embarrassed for yourself. So Team Brooklyn, I will also just say, and I'm a very goes on vibes person. There's just something about Brooklyn in photos and stuff where he just always looks like a deer in headlights and just kind of a little bit scared, intimidated, where I do think he is the kind of kid who just let himself get run over and just he's being bankrolled, I'm sure, to some extent by his family and feels like he has to stay in line or maybe the money train will stop flowing. But now that he's married to Nicola Peltz, by the way, Victoria Beckham cannot say she's a gold digger because she is a kid of millionaires, if billionaire, I think. So that's not in play. So yeah, that just also sells that anything she's worrying about is fully petty. And she does not think her son is in danger or it's going to be some, freaking The Girlfriend, that show on whatever on Amazon. It's not going to be that situation, right? So it's anything you're worried about is so trivial. Just stop. So that's where I am with that. And we're going to go from petty to petty and talk about the Blake Lively and Taylor Swift situation. If, like me, everything you've heard about the situation is against your will, then, have a seat here and we'll try to get through it together. Because I also have not followed this story avidly. It has been actually shoved down my throat. And I mean, the players involved are not people I follow in any way, shape, or form. I am not a Swiftie. I don't think Blake Lively necessarily has diehard fans. Everyone does. I guess she probably does. And I did not know a Justin Baldoni from Bob. I did not know that name. So again, everything that I am telling you, I have learned under duress against my will. So essentially what this is that Justin Baldoni was a director, producer, I don't know, a bunch of headings on a movie that Blake Lively was in. During this filming, I guess, her story is that he was creating a toxic work environment, was harassing her, sexually harassing, I guess. But I mean, it seems like her complaint is that he asked about her weight because he would have to pick her up and maybe wrote some text that, I don't know, maybe she found a bit unsavory. Having looked at a couple of them, but not many, I wouldn't say that I felt like she was being sexually harassed, but I don't rule out that he was being chauvinistic. So it could be, is there an overlap there of if someone is chauvinistic that somehow is harassing them sexually because it's about the gender or sex you are? I'm not sure, but I don't think so. Again, I'd have to deep dive the particulars a little bit more to get super clear on that. But from what I've read of certain texts that he's written to her, it actually seems like sometimes she was a little bit inappropriate. And he did sort of seem to feel like he needed to bring up his partner because maybe there were some texts that she was sending him that were like a little bit too familiar. So that was that for a while. We just kept hearing that back and forth. And there were lawsuits coming from each one. Him basically saying that she was hijacking his movie, which she essentially ended up being allowed to do. She did end up hijacking the movie and then taking it over and rewrites and whatnot. And it came out. And by the way, this was like a domestic violence book. A book about domestic violence is becoming a movie that is so overshadowed by this nonsense. And yeah, her side of the story is that he was a chauvinistic pig and was harassing her and was like deeply inappropriate and made the shoot like impossible, right? So we've been hearing that and they've been countersuing each other and it's just been really public. And for a long time, there has been, we've been told that Taylor Swift had a bunch of messages with her and other celebrities as well had some messages and emails with her that would come out or that they're trying to depose, right? And it seemed like Taylor Swift, who was a friend of Blake Lively's and maybe less so now, but was trying to just kind of wash her hands of it and not be involved. But essentially, these texts really recently were subpoenaed. And, I looked them over. I looked at them on the TikToks. And here are my takeaways. So the first couple that I saw were very much just Blake Lively being like, hey, like, this is crazy the way this guy's acting. Like, what can I do about it? Like, I need to, get him off this. Like, and it just seemed like someone who is stressed about their work environment does think someone's deeply creepy and weird and like is angry and wants to retaliate. And Taylor Swift, her responses are very like, yeah, like, F that guy. That shouldn't be happening to you. That sucks. And, here's some of my savvy ways that I would deal with it and like cut him off at the legs. And it did feel very like, a friend supporting a friend, taking her at her word and maybe kind of, I don't know, doing a little bit of a brain storm about how to, spin it in the public eye a little bit and kind of best him in the press. Right. And Taylor did sound very like, she made some comments like, oh, look at him taking his violin out now because it seems like she said actually, this little bitch has his little violin out now because he must know something's coming. I think referring to the fact that he must know that Blake is kind of regrouping and trying to, I don't know, converge on him in some way publicly. But interestingly enough and disturbingly enough, the violin that he brought out was saying that he was sexually traumatized by a former partner. So whether or not, that is the case, and we can believe that that's the case. I don't know the guy. It's pretty unsavory to call that taking your violin out if someone felt sexually traumatized. But again, these were texts that were supposed to be private, and Lord knows we all kiki with our friends and in ways that we wouldn't want to see made public. As someone who again is not a fan of Taylor Swift, is not a Swiftie by any means, I don't really see a whole lot of fault in Taylor's responses in these texts. She just seems to be matching the energy of her friend, of how upset her friend is, and trying to support her and give her advice of how to basically come out on top of what seems like a bit of a media battle that's about to happen, a mudslinging media battle. So she comes out okay in it. And then there were further emails between them where it's Blake Lively, I guess after that exchange, it seemed to be quickly responded to and pretty, rapid fire. I guess there had been a gap in communication of some kind, because the next message was Blake Lively just being like, hey, no big deal if you don't have time to answer this, but are you mad? It was kind of are you mad at me? Did I do something wrong kind of message? Because and it's totally fine if you just don't have time to answer a lot of the stuff. I know I'm saying a lot of stuff about Justin, and this Justin stuff is getting annoying, because this is, I guess, in the thick of it when they're going back and forth a lot. And I'm sure she's asking for a lot of support from her famous friends to speak out for her, blah, blah. And Taylor's response was, again, I think pretty, grown up and thoughtful. And I actually thought Blake's message to Taylor was not pushy and thoughtful. And I don't know. I didn't really find too much fault in it. It was just kind of hey, have I pissed you off? It's totally okay if you don't feel like being more involved than you are, but I just want to make sure we're good. That's the read that I got on it. I mean, look it up yourself, but that was the vibe I got from that message. And Taylor's response back was hey, listen, I am really busy and all that is going on. It does sound like what's going on with you is terrible. So I totally get, I'm paraphrasing again, I totally get why you're talking about Justin so much. So she's acknowledging that she is getting a lot of Justin stuff from Blake, and she is acknowledging that maybe she can't keep up with it and it's fatiguing her a bit. But she's also totally get it. Don't ever want to, criticize the way that you're processing any of this. But I will say the tone of how you've been messaging me lately feels a little bit like a corporate email that has gone out to 200 people. So she basically, she mentioned the fact that that Blake had used the word "we" in a few of her text exchanges, which does sound a bit like this weird corporate entity unit, rather than just your friend being hey, I was wondering if you could do this, or blah, blah. It was very we feel right. So she was responding to that and just being it just kind of felt a little off to me, and I didn't really want to interact with you in that way. And again, in turn, Blake responded well, making jokes about it, kind of using corporate speak in her response, I think, to dispel the awkwardness. And again, this exchange feels very like friends. It feels very like friends when things get weird, or you're kind of not wanting to get involved in a situation, but they seemed really thoughtful, adult, and grown up in how they were communicating with each other. And I can be objective about this because I don't enjoy them publicly. Obviously, I don't know them personally, but their public personas and their work is not something that I'm enjoying enough to have I almost said a rat in the race, but a horse in the race. I don't have one. I have no skin in the game. But I thought that exchange was fine. Apparently, there were also messages sent by Ryan Reynolds to his famous friends. I should mention, in some of the earlier texts that were released during all this crossfire of lawsuits between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, there were some messages between Blake and her husband, Ryan Reynolds, that were kind of talking about the harassment and he's a douchebag, Ryan is saying, and Blake is yeah, he asked how much I weigh, and no, and then you have to remember, though, we have also seen some of Blake's messages and text to Justin Baldoni being very gushing and being very so excited to work with you. Again, I think a lot of people took this as a slam dunk of like Justin's telling the truth. I don't take it as a slam dunk because having been in jobs where I've worked with a lot of douchebags, women, I don't want to say just women, a lot of people do know how to kind of like pet and like placate people that they know they have to work with, and how to kind of fluff their egos and just keep them kind of feeling in charge and calm. And so she could have been doing that. She could have been being ingratiating, strategically. That's possible. But I did feel like the tone of some of her messages back and forth, I felt like sometimes she sounded a little bit inappropriate to him. And I think I felt from his responses, he was setting a bit of a boundary. And so that's fueled a bit of a story for some people. And I can entertain it. Again, I don't have a strong like slam dunk, this is what happened. I don't think that I can declare that. I feel more strongly about the Posh situation and who's at fault there than I do about this one. But I think that there is some, let's say, weight or credence to the narrative that maybe she had a bit of a crush on this Baldoni guy. And I think sometimes, when you think that you're getting flirty energy from someone and you're not, the turnaround from that of embarrassment can sort of cause you to be very angry at someone and can cause you to want to retaliate against them, and maybe even unconsciously really like look at the way that they treat you in more of a harsh light, because you're just deciding that this is a douchebag and they've rejected me, and like now I'm going to really notice and pick at everything they do wrong. So it's possible. And it's also possible this guy is just a douche. I mean, I don't know. Her co-star, Jenny Slate, has also, kind of spoken against him and said that, she didn't enjoy working with him. He's worked on a lot of projects in the past, and I don't think he has a bad reputation overall. But as we know with Harvey Weinstein and all these other people who kind of got called out during Me Too, that does not mean things aren't happening. It just means that, some people want to keep their jobs and they don't want to be known as like, a shit stirrer. So who the hell knows at the end of the day? I did find it really interesting who Ryan's besties were, though. Bradley Cooper and Hugh Jackman being your besties definitely made me like raise a little eyebrow. Them specifically. I think some of you know what I mean. Another one of his besties is like George Clooney. I don't know, it's sus. But either way, I guess he reached out to them just kind of being like this guy and, like respond, and like their tone of like how they were writing their friends was kind of irritating too. It was very like, hey, super low pressure ask. But then it's like, paragraph upon paragraph about what this ask is. And it actually, it asks a lot of them, whether or not you feel like you're pressuring them, whether or not you write low pressure 1,000 times, the fact that you're reaching out to them personally and, writing a super long thing, and it doesn't feel like an easy out necessarily. Yeah, it just seems, the language just felt a little bit like manipulative to me. I think if something is a low pressure ask, it's just kind of like you send it in a bit more of a mass, like, and just being like, hey, if anyone, and it felt a little bit like rolling up to like, we need you to do this. And yeah, maybe that was some of the energy that was coming at Taylor Swift that she was not super appreciating. But yeah, either way, I don't have like a Yasmin intuition, like super strong read on this. It's tough when I find none of these people particularly likable. I find they all feel pretty calculated and strategic to me. I don't really have a huge read on Justin Baldoni, but from some of his like, I don't know, fast talking, schmoozy language, like I didn't love the vibe. So it just kind of feels like slimy people being sliding and slipping and sliding all over each other to me. So it's really hard to just like see the limbs for all the Vaseline. Essentially is how I feel. I just feel like everyone's in the mud pit and I can't tell who's who. So we're going to leave that there. But, I'm interested to see if anything else comes up with it, I guess, because I'm forced to be, is how I feel. And, lastly, I kind of did want to mention it's a little bit niche. It's a little bit like reality show only. So I don't know if everyone is super cute into this, but one of Bravo's golden couples of Summer House, Brian, did I say Brian? My God. Kyle Cooke and Amanda Batula have separated officially. There were rumors since BravoCon that these two were kind of, going through it and maybe not, they're living separate lives is what we were hearing. And now they've confirmed it. They've put out a joint statement. And, this relationship, it's been interesting to me from jump. I mean, we met Amanda season 1 on Summer House as this girl who, I mean, she just, I guess, was in the Hamptons. She wasn't a cast member at all. Like, he was living in this house that was Summer House with all these young singles who get a Hamptons house together every summer and they just go out there and party. And, he was living his best single life. And there was this girl that he was describing as like super cool girl that like, he calls late night and they hang out and like she's just like chill and easy, right? Not easy in that way. I just mean chill and like relaxed and like laid back about stuff and doesn't like, ask too much of him. And like he would just call her in the middle of the night and she would just show up in her pajamas and sleep over and then go back. And I guess at some point they ended up having a bit of a what are we kind of conversation. And but it was a bit of a booty call thing for a while. And she was in the Hamptons essentially because I guess some of her family have a house or something out there, or maybe she was with friends or cousins. I'm not sure. But she was just kind of making herself really available. And I do remember thinking before we really knew her as a character that like she was a lot younger than him. Kyle's around my age. She's in his 40s. And she's at the time, I mean, she was like very young. She's like 22, 23, I want to say. So like, like half his age. So I did feel like this girl is making herself too available. She's not giving him any reason to like change the program because like she's just down to like show up whenever. But I guess she pinned him down and was like, kind of like, what are we? And they became girlfriend, boyfriend. And, hilarity ensued. He cheated a bunch while they were together. And, it came out in seasons. He was known to like flirt late night in the Hamptons. He was just always the guy who like could not just come home when everyone else did. So if every single other person in this house would come home at like 2 a.m., he had to be there till 6 a.m. He had to like crawl in when it was dawn. And again, he wasn't quite 40 yet, but this dude was up there at this point. I mean, he was like 36 or I don't know. Not a 20-year-old, not in that phase of life for most people. But either way, so like their relationship's always kind of been dogged with these like rumors of him just being, if not fully unfaithful, just way too flirty and inappropriate late night. And he does not seem to know how to control himself when he drinks. And he likes to drink a lot. He seems like a weekend warrior, seems to keep his shit together enough to run a company day to day. But on the weekend, he likes to, as he calls it, send it. And I guess there amongst her friends, there's always been a bit of a feeling like it's the Kyle show and that he's very much like about himself and what he wants to do in his company. And she's maybe not been allowed to necessarily pursue her own interests. And she did work for his company and still does, actually. She's a part owner, I guess, of that company. I've always had a controversial take on Amanda and Kyle's work relationship, let's say. I definitely think he is a scallywag in their romantic relationship. I don't think there's any reason at your age to have so much FOMO that if your girlfriend is saying, let's go home, we're done clubbing, you can't just go home. That always bothered me with like Stassi and Beau too. If Stassi is like, okay, let's call it, why are you not able to call it, Beau? Like you're 38, 40, whatever it is. Like it just seems so dumb to me. And like, what do you hope will happen at the club this late at your big age? So like, that's always just like Team Amanda on that one. And also obviously him being a cheater and being insane. But with the company, I always felt a little bit of Amanda wanting to have her cake and eat it too. So I don't think that he should need to stay out at all to all hours of the night. But I do think he took on a lot of the stress and the financial burden. And when she was feeling like, she suffers from depression and she just kind of felt like she couldn't get off the couch, he still has to run this business. And he started this business from scratch, right? And, there's a lot of money out and debt that you take on being a CEO of a company and having a startup, right? And I do think that is what leads to a lot of his over consuming and a lot of his very funny late night muffin man moments where he's just sitting at a kitchen counter just talking to himself, blackout drunk. Um, and I do think that she wants to live in a nice apartment and, buy nice outfits and, all that stuff. But doesn't want to deal with the implications of someone being that busy and having to run a company that is that stressful. I won't say single-handedly, of course he has employees, but like most of the weight goes on his shoulders. And I think unless you're willing to like take a good amount of it off his shoulders, the complaint about how available he is both with time and emotions, it feels a little empty if you're not willing to be supportive in that way. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, but she was a creative ambassador. There are so many episodes that I have seen that you can tell from the subtext that he is asking her to work a little bit more. And she's saying, I can't, I'm too depressed. And I just don't feel like I can really do it. And I don't want to blame someone for having depression, but then just let him be busy. You know what I mean? So that's always kind of been a disconnect for me. And I could defend either of them on separate things, but it did seem like maybe there's a compatibility problem here. So for better or worse, I definitely feel like it's probably a good idea for them to go their separate ways. Amanda seems to, like her friend Paige said, want to drink a margarita by a pool in New Jersey. And Kyle Cooke wants to go out to all hours in the hot spots of New York City. And he's a DJ now. That was also a wild move when your wife of just a little bit is telling you, could you please not be such a late night guy? And you're like, I'm going to become a DJ. And also when you're saying, I'm so busy and like, that's why I can't fully, dedicate myself. I'm so stressed out. I'm busy because of my job. So let me take on another one that keeps me out until 5 a.m. Yeah, it's getting a little bit harder to defend Kyle, and I'm also in the minority of not being the hugest Amanda Batula apologist. I don't dislike Amanda, her character publicly, obviously. I'm always just talking about how people are portrayed on TV. I understand that I don't know these people, right? But I know a lot of people are very like, Amanda's the best, she's the chillest, she's the coolest. To me, I've always found her to seem like a bit of a pick-me. Sorry. That's what I see. I've always felt like she does the I'm not like other girls thing. She's always kind of trying to say, yeah, I mean, everyone is like super dressed up to go out. I'm just kind of like throwing it on or whatever. But like, I think that she's pretty into like her looks and all that. And I don't buy it. And there's also just a bit of a theatrics around the eating junk food and being like, I'm eating a piece of pizza. And I just sort of notice, because I have my own things with food, I have my little viral video of like talking about how Bethany does not ever actually eat her food on camera. It's unfortunate, but when you've had an eating disorder, you clock when people are performatively eating. And Amanda Batula is the queen of performative eating. She will always say a lot about what she's consuming if it's like late night pizza or McDonald's. And you'll actually just see her taking a fry, breaking it in half and eating it like it's an entire meal, like the one fry. I see her tearing things that are already small. You don't have to clock it. I'm happy for you if you don't, but I clock it and it bugs the shit out of me. And she also is the kind of chick who'll be like, there's two kind of Halloween costume girls. I'm dressed out like a bear, completely covered, or like I look like a crazy man. And then there's like the girl who tries to be the hot girl. And I don't know why there are certain women who always feel the need to point out and make distinctions over who's low maintenance and who's high maintenance. Just like maintain yourself however you want and leave everybody else alone. So I've always found her to be a little bit pick-me and also male-centered. Having a boyfriend who's a bit of a terrorist, the way that Kyle has sometimes been on Summer House, she will sometimes just like be quiet or like go off to the side and cry to her friends about it. But in the moment, she sort of just defends his behavior. And, even to be with someone who is behaving like that, it just takes a little bit of centering men in a way that like I don't necessarily always respect. So she's not actually a fave. And maybe that's painting my view of this whole thing. But one way or the other, we can all agree that they're not like super compatible. I've definitely yacked a lot on something that's really niche this week, but this is just kind of what I needed. I needed like a guilty pleasure kind of episode. And so this was that one. And I'm going to leave it with that. And, Fetty is free, and so will we be one day. All right, I'll see you next time.